Hello everyone and welcome back to Milo Farms. Well, today we're going to be talking about some preseason maintenance on this 2000 Yamaha Mountain Max 700. Well, a little backstory with this particular machine. Back in about the year 2000 or 2001, prior to then, every time we'd gone to the cabin in the wintertime, we would always hike up the hill, which was not a fun experience, through the snow to the cabin. Or we would borrow a snowmobile from one of our neighbors up there and get up to the cabin. Around the year 2002 or so, the neighbor had picked up a 2001 Yamaha Mountain Max 700. And we rode that up there, used it a couple times, and I kind of fell in love with that sled myself. And at the time, it was really a great mountain sled, and it still to this day is a great mountain sled. For certain applications, there's definitely better things out there, but it still works great, and you actually still run into people on the trails and out in the woods with them. So they're great machines. But anyway, I kind of fell in love with that machine, and I said, you know what, someday I'm going to have one of those. But the problem was I couldn't afford anything, had no money to spend on extra things or buy stuff that was super expensive, so at the time that was not going to happen. So right after that, in 2002, we picked up a 1976 Yamaha GP300 snowmobile. Used that all the way up until about 2014 or so. And then in 2014, I decided I'm going to have to do something different if I want to get more serious and be able to do more than just literally drive to the house or drive out to the ice fishing spot. And so I started looking around, and I thought, you know, I still want that Mountain Max if I could ever find one. And I came to find this one right here. I found it from an older gentleman that couldn't use it anymore. I paid $1,000 for it, and it needed a whole bunch of work. I got it fixed up, and it works great. So what I'm going to do is we're going to scroll through some pictures of the kind of progression of the old sleds and the old kind of way we did stuff, and all the way up until the new stuff that we have now. And just so you can kind of see the progression of things. And everything that we got was cheap or was used or was broken or was something, and we went through and fixed it all up and made it work. There was nothing, you know, not like we went out and bought anything brand new or anything like that. So we'll go to those pictures, take a look at those, and then we'll come back to the preseason maintenance on the Mountain Max. So nowadays, this machine's pretty much the one that Mrs. Milo Farms rides. This is her favorite machine. The nice thing about a Mountain Max is if you're riding it on a trail or something like that, it's very easy to just steer it where you want to go. It's not top heavy. It's very comfortable to ride. You've got a lot of space. So it's a very easy machine to ride for somebody that doesn't want to get very aggressive with the riding. So that's why this one's her favorite machine and the one she typically rides now. So we'll start out here with a little walk around of this machine. This is a 2000 Yamaha Mountain Max 700. This one originally had narrower skis on it, was the factory skis that it came with. But these skis, just like the ones on the RX-1, were taken off of an Apex. They fit exactly the same. The only thing you have to do differently is you have to replicate some kind of a spacer for right here, which we've done using these stainless steel washers on each side to center it. Everything else is exactly the same. So they mount right up, really helps with the flotation on the front of the machine there. So coming around here on this one, a couple years ago, put a brand new seat cover on it, and at the same time added about 2 inches of foam, heavy foam right here to the place you'd actually sit on the machine. So it is a little bit deformed from what it was originally designed. It was originally flat across here and then had kind of a little hump right here. And then it does have this luggage box here in the back as well that you can keep stuff in, which is kind of cool. And then a few years ago, I found this rack here on eBay and mounted this rack up on there. This works really well for a couple things. I did it at the same time that we did the seat reupholstery. So rather than having all the holes punched in the back of the seat here for the light to mount on, which didn't mount up all that well, I punched one very little hole here and ran these wires through it, extended the wires out, and then the taillights mounted back here in the back under the rack. So this, as best I can tell, is an actual Yamaha rack because it does have a Yamaha part number on it and everything. And so it's worked great so far. We don't use it very often. You wouldn't want to put a lot of weight back there. But the rack says don't exceed 24 pounds on it, so that could be like a gas can or something like that. But what we used it for was to put our, when we go up and go to Bergdorf Hot Springs and we have all of our wet towels and swimming suits, I would wrap those up in a bundle and then some bungee cords, bungee cord them right here. By the time you got back to the truck, they were frozen solid, but they would always, it would keep the water out and the weight out of your backpack, so you didn't have to fight with those. So that's what we put that on there for. It worked great. So you can see on here, this machine has the 141-inch track. You can see the sticker down there that shows that. So it's not a super long track by today's standards, but it does great for what it is. And this machine here has, looks like 6,173 miles on it right now. The engine's never been taken apart. It still has good compression, still starts real easy, runs great. So haven't really had any concerns with it at all. So let's go ahead and take a look under the hood. So lifting the hood up here, this is the triple that they put in the Mountain Maxes. Some people call it, I think, like the redhead triple or something like that. Got 3 cylinders in line right there, so it's a very balanced engine, very smooth running engine. It does have this huge exhaust system over here that adds a lot of weight. A lot of guys have swapped this part out here with a lighter weight one. I think you can lose like 10 pounds or something doing that. So we thought about doing that, but it's still all original. Haven't really bothered with it. This one does also have electric start as well. So it's got the battery there. The starter's down under the front of the motor on there. Then coming around the other side, kind of get a little better view of the engine there. Carburetor's behind, and then this box up here is all the intake, air box and silencer and all that. And then underneath this cover here is the clutches. So let's go ahead and get started with the pre-season maintenance and see what we can see. So first thing we're going to do here is take a look at the clutches underneath. So you take the pin out, lift this cover up, and you can see right here we have a primary clutch and we have a secondary clutch. Primary clutch, obviously off the engine. There you can see the starter ring gear, and then the starter's right down here in the bottom. I was always kind of a person that was a little hesitant of electric start on a snowmobile, and yeah, it adds a lot of weight, but when you're starting to triple like this, first thing in the morning after it sat out all night in the cold, and rather than trying to dislocate your shoulder or break the pull rope, you just crank the engine over with the key and it starts right up. There's really something to be said for it. I couldn't find the entire starter kit anywhere that wasn't, $1,500 or something. So I ended up getting on eBay and I bought all the pieces individually for that. One, piece by piece. I bought the ring gear, the starter. I actually bought an aftermarket starter for that. It bolts up exactly like the original, but it is the aftermarket one. And then over here, there's this little wiring pigtail. I think this is it here. That's for the charging wire. Comes off of the wires here and goes down. I'm pretty sure that's it. If not, it looks just like that. It's on the other side. Over there, that goes down to the relay. Ended up buying an aftermarket starter relay because the price was half of what the other one was. And then for all the big wiring, the heavy duty wiring for the hot side leads for the starter, which you can see the red one right there. I just went over to the auto parts store and we made a custom cable for that. And then for the neutral or the ground leg, I did find the original for that. The problem was a lot of those pieces were discontinued, so if you could find a whole kit together, it was cost prohibitive to buy. particularly the starter, which you can see down there at the bottom. That starter was like $300 or something, some of the ones I was finding. So we'll start with taking a look at these clutches here. So kind of just look around this. We're checking the rollers, make sure everything looks okay. Again, these pins being loose is somewhat normal. Making sure nothing's broken or really loose where it's not supposed to be. Down in here, everything looks good. There's a little bit of wear right here, but on a machine with that many miles on it, especially one that has done a lot of idling in its time, a little wear mark right there is not all that out of the ordinary. So then back here to the secondary clutch, we've got the machine up off the ground so you can roll the track around. It's a little tight because it hasn't spun all summer. But you can see down in there, there's a little rust and things like that, but don't see anything broken down in there or majorly torn up. Everything looks all right. And you can kind of go up and down and check the bearings. The clutch side to side, like that, is normal. But you do have a bearing right behind here. Right there you'd want to check, just for any kind of play. So then let's go around and take a look at the track. So underneath here is the track. You've got the 4 drivers up here in the front. On the left over here, up where you can't see, is the left drive shaft bearing. And over on the right, over there at the end, is the right-hand drive shaft bearing and the lower chain case bearing in there. This machine probably wouldn't hurt to replace that at some point. We replaced the left one a few years ago, but haven't replaced the right one. This machine did have a new track put on it a few years ago, right before I bought it, and so presumably the bearings were replaced then, but who knows, they very well could have not been. So when I get some time and some energy, I'm going to try to pull that all apart. I thought that I'd probably do it in a year or two when I put a new battery in it, because once you've pulled the battery out, there's a whole lot less things in the way to deal with there. So we'll go through, just kind of check all the wheels, make sure they've got good movement in them. A lot of these wheels have these stress cracks in them, but they've had the same stress cracks in them for all the years I've had this machine. So I'm not terribly worried about it. We'll just kind of keep an eye on them. Track tension here, kind of see where we're at with that. I might actually loosen that just a hair because that is pretty tight, a little tighter than what I'd like on that. Then these wheels up here, it's nearly impossible to check these just because they've got the track tension on them. There is some more wheels right here you can check. And then these back wheels the same way. Those don't turn very easily because of the track tension. So then you have these couple in here you can check. And those are looking pretty good too. And while you're down here, take the opportunity to check the Hyfax as well. If they start getting up close to this wear mark on here, definitely going to want to do something there and replace those. If they've never been replaced before, or if they haven't been replaced in a long time, they're pretty difficult to get off, but if you replace them every few years, they're not that bad. So grease fitting wise on the suspension, on this machine, you've got one grease zerk right up under here on the front. Then you've got a second grease zerk right behind here on the front of the machine. And you've got another one right here. And then you have 2 in the back here and here. So right there where you see it, and then right down below. And then on each side, you have one on the left and one on the right as well. So you're going to want to hit those with that same grease that we have in the past videos. This is the grease right here, the Yamaha snowmobile high performance suspension grease. So load that up in your grease gun and you want to hit all those grease zerks. So we got the suspension zerks lubricated, and then you want to come up to the front, right here on the each ski. Above the ski, you've got this one here. Same on the other side. And then down under here in the middle, right there under the exhaust, is another one on the steering. And then you want to make sure you lubricate these steering joints with some kind of a light lubricant of some sort before the season starts as well. So that'll pretty much conclude the greasing portion of things. And since it's a two-stroke, there's no oil that has to be changed. But we do want to make sure we check the antifreeze, which is right here. Our level is just above the cold full line. You want to replace that every couple years. And then you want to replace, or you want not replace, you want to check the level of the two-stroke oil. This one's only down about an inch or two from full, so I'm going to go ahead and just top that off with new Yamaha Lube, the 2S formula. That's what we run in these. So we'll go ahead and we'll do those two things, and then we're going to get on to the chain case oil. Okay, we've got all the lubrication done, and we've got the antifreeze checked. We topped it off with two-stroke oil. If you would like to, you can check the spark plugs, which are all three right across there. I usually replace those every couple years. With this machine that doesn't get a ton of mileage on it, you could probably stretch it a lot further than that, but that's the spark plugs right there that you could check. So now we're going to come over here to the clutches, and we've got this belt right here, this Yamaha belt for the machine. This machine's been used for maybe 200-300 miles, almost brand new. Check it over, make sure it looks all right, and then we'll go ahead and install it on here. To install it, what you're going to want to do is set the parking brake first, which is right up here on the handlebars. Get that set. Then we'll go ahead and we'll put this belt on the front pulley there, which is the primary clutch, and then we'll take it back to the rear clutch, the secondary clutch, and we will open that up wider by pushing on this section of it here to make it wider, like that, and then we'll slip it over there. So I'm going to have to set the camera down to do that. Okay, we've got the belt down in there. Right now it is pretty loose. Once it's in its position, it'll slip back up into here. But we're going to go ahead and start the engine with it loose on this front clutch, warm it up, and then we're going to rotate the track area for a few minutes to get the oil and the chain case loosened up so we can change that out. So on this particular unit, you've got the choke right here. That's half choke and full choke. And then you've got the run position without warmers, and then run with warmers. And then the start position, so you want to make sure this knob here is pulled all the way up. And we'll go ahead and start it up. Okay, so we shut that off. Kind of going to let the smoke clear here a little bit. And then we'll try to get this muffler out of here that has not gotten too hot because we only had it running for just a second. Once we get that muffler out of the way, you've got this screw, or this spring here, this spring here, this spring here, and then these two springs here. And then that'll get the muffler out of the way. Once we've cleared that out, then we can get down there and change that chain case oil. It is possible to do it without taking the muffler out, but it is kind of a bummer to do that. So there it is with the silencer removed. And you can see here, if a person had to get to the recoil starter, it would be right here. The magneto, or whatever you want to call it, that makes the power for the unit is right behind it, right in this area. So you can see the wires that come out of it there. And then right here you can see the tensioner for the chain case right there, and then there's the dipstick. So let's go ahead and pull this dipstick out and see what we've got. This dipstick kind of hooks around here, so you got to pull it out and then sort of jiggle it, and then it'll come up. Pull this guy out. Let me get a rag. Okay, we pulled it out. I just wiped it off here. There's a little magnet on the tip of it, and then it shows, if I can get it to focus here, Doesn't look like it's going to focus, but it shows where the standard level should be, and then if you have reverse, it shows where that should be on the other side. So this is the standard level, which is higher. It's a little bit deceptive, though. It's the same amount of fluid that you put in there, whether you have standard or reverse, but the difference in level is because there's so much more stuff in there with the reverse. But then you also have a larger case for it to go in, so that's why the level's lower. So we're back down here under the machine, and we're on the right hand side, right in front of the heat exchanger, right where the front drive shaft goes into the chain case. And this drain plug right here is what we're looking for. It's the only bolt in this area that has a little copper washer under it. You can see right there. So we're going to go ahead and take that out and let the oil out of the chain case. Okay, there we go. They've definitely come a long ways with this particular part of the machine, because when you get to the RX1, and better yet, when you get to the phasers, there's no mess, whereas this one kind of splatters it all over the side and everywhere. So like we said before in the other videos, if you watch those, there's lots of different options for the chain case lube. You can get the Yamaha lube version. There's other different choices out there. I've had really good success with this Polaris SCL lubricant for the last couple of years. The biggest thing is there's a Polaris dealership right around the corner, and they have this. It doesn't smell bad, and it seems to do the same thing and work really well for lubricating wise, and it's cheaper. If you buy a gallon of it, that'll last me several years. So we're going to go ahead and put around 8 ounces in there, and we'll check the level. So this unit here is 2 ounces when full. So we'll just do 2 ounces, let it soak down, and then we'll do another 2, and then we'll check it partway through and see where we're at. I think it's getting more than 2 ounces because by the time I get it full, it's already dumped some down there. So we want to remember there's 2 different sides to this. There's the side that says reverse. There's the side that says standard. We're going to be doing it on the standard side. So just stick it in there, pull it back out. And we're right here is the level that it's supposed to be at, and we're just a little bit above that. So I'm not too worried about that. Should be just fine. So go ahead and put this back in here. And it's kind of a trick to it. You put it back in and twist it and get it to snap up on there. So you want to make sure you have your protection back over your recoil rope here, and then you also want to make sure your recoil rope is run up through this little channel right here and where it belongs, so it doesn't wear as badly. But given this has electric starter, the recoil is more for just an emergency and very rarely gets used. Alright, so we have the silencer here. We want to make sure we get it put back in. It has a rubber right here on the bottom that is broken off. So when we put it back down, we want to make sure we get it seated on that rubber correctly. And then it has the 2 rubbers up here that are seated correctly as well. So go ahead and slide it down in here. Drop the bottom part through the bottom. Then that'll slip right on here like that. And then everything seats back in correctly. Then you've got all these springs you want to go ahead and hook back up. That's the easier one of the springs right there. And then all the harder ones of the springs here. So they sell a tool that does this. You can usually get away with a pair of channel locks like this. So there's one. And this is the second one here. This one tends to be a little bit harder. You almost have to kind of push your arm against it and get that one in. Then you have the last 2, which go up here on top, and they're going to go like this. So you put that one there, that one there, and what you don't want to do is drop those down inside of the motor area, because you would struggle to get those out. So one goes there. One goes there. And then you can kind of just jiggle it and make sure it's seated in place. And you can feel underneath here, and you can feel that the tip is sticking down in the hole where it's supposed to be. So that pretty much concludes the whole project here today. Much quicker job than doing it on a 4-stroke. You don't have to change the oil. You don't have to fight with all that stuff, getting covers off and things like that. So you do have a downside of the two-stroke that you have less engine life, the smell, the noise, things like that. But with the advantage of a two-stroke, you have lighter weight usually, things like that. So there's definitely pros and cons to the whole thing. I personally think that four-strokes are the way to go in the future, but the two-strokes definitely have our place. And like I said, this one here is the one that Mrs. Milo Farms likes the best, given the way it rides and for her comfort level and everything. So hope everybody enjoyed the video. Please remember to like, comment, subscribe, and you can't finish a project without getting started.